All right. Well, we are back. Hope everybody had a great holiday season with their loved ones, and we've got New Year's coming up on the horizon too. So, hope everyone's enjoying an end of the year, the holiday season. We took a little bit of a hiatus here on the show, of course, to spend time with our family and friends as well. But we are back. We're excited about it. A lot's happened, Mark, and what happened most recently. That's why we decided to do a show here on Friday, kind of
Yeah.
launch ourselves into the Week 17 preview with a lot of implications, of course, this week. But we did just see the Cleveland Browns clinch themselves a playoff berth. And I wanted to toss it to this real quick. Touchdown passes this season. Joe Flacco, 13. New York Giants, 13. Carolina Panthers, 13. Pittsburgh Steelers and Tennessee Titans, 12. And the New York Jets, 11. So Joe Flacco, who came out of the scene
Wow.
mid-season after mid-season, really,
He's
has
four
thrown
and
more
one.
touchdown passes than 5 franchises in the NFL so far. And wow, much deserved there for the 38-year-old as he puts himself in great position here to not only get his team a playoff berth, but they're competing, Mark, for not only the AFC North potentially here. They are still alive for the 1 seed in the AFC. How about that for the Cleveland Browns?
I will say the Cleveland Browns story is like a weird microcosm for the whole season. It was. If you were to go back in to us in August, or late September, early August, late July, early August,
October. Oh,
we
okay.
would have
Gotcha.
we would have been talking on the show about the preview. Like, oh my God, this season's going to be incredible. Look at all the quarterbacks. I mean, it is. We've never had better quarterback play in the league in our lives. And how many times we talk about the AFC being like, 2 or 3 of these guys aren't going to make the playoffs. You know what I mean? You have so many guys, Lawrence and Herbert and Allen and Burrow and Rodgers and Russell Wilson. And here we are. It's December 29th. We're in week 17, and we're talking about Joe Flacco and the Cleveland Browns being maybe the second best team in the AFC this morning. It's an incredible microcosm in the sense that we've seen a ton of quarterback turmoil this year, and we've seen from the star quarterbacks that have played through the year, a lot of underwhelming performances and a lot of underwhelming statistics. We're used to, especially with the added game, 17-game season, we feel used to last year. You're seeing guys, multiple dudes throwing 30-plus touchdown passes, putting up big numbers. We have multiple guys making a case for the MVP. This year, it just feels like it all felt like the kind of the housing market collapse of 2008 or something. You know what I mean? It just feels like that quarterback bubble burst. And what's left standing in the AFC is now, can Josh Allen make the playoffs? And will Patrick Mahomes have anyone to catch the ball in the playoffs? And Joe Flacco might be leading and playing the best quarterback play in the NFL right now. It's a fun story, and I will say we'll talk more about it here in a second. But I think, to me, the biggest thing to take away from it all is that if you were like us and like a staunch anti-Deshaun Watson, staunch anti-Cleveland Browns for what they did, which I think is most casual football fans in general, how are you not rooting for Cleveland to go deep? I mean, at this point in time, the most fun we can have and the most chaos will be Cleveland in the AFC Championship game. And God forbid they win it and the Browns end up in a Super Bowl with Joe Flacco. That is ultimate chaos for the offseason. And what they do with Deshaun Watson, that contract, it would be hilarious. It would be one of those things that would be so juicy for us as sports and football fans, like just to talk about. It would be an endless amount of radio and podcasting chatter. Just like, and the hot takes to be flowing is for what Cleveland should do. So if you're rooting for chaos, root for Cleveland at this point in time.
It reminds me of the Michael Caine line with some men just want to watch the world burn. That is the NFL in 2023. We have got so many implications coming up this weekend. A lot of great games to look forward to as it's do or die time for many, many teams throughout the league. We preview all of Week 17 coming up next.
serving the Quad Cities area since 1973. And with over 50 years of excellence on their track record, you'll see why it's so easy to trust their experts when it comes to all of your home improvement projects. This family-owned business has you covered on all your needs. Protect your home or building from the elements today and get great roof repair services. Need new windows? No problem. Durham Remodeling can upgrade your windows and doors. Whether you want to upgrade the little details in your home or office, or want to tear a room down and start fresh, the expert contractors at Durham Remodeling have your back. Even the smallest changes can completely transform your space. Ready to start entertaining your friends for backyard barbecues? Durham Remodeling will help you plan, design, and build your deck and patio for the perfect outdoor space. Durham Remodeling's work is 100% guaranteed, so you can rest assured that you're getting the best service around. Call 309-786-6715 today for your free estimate for all your roofing, siding, flooring, windows, and painting needs. That's Durham Remodeling, 309-786-6715.
So looking at the Week 17 quarterback slate, including yesterday's game, this is what we have to look forward to. Jaron Hall, Mason Rudolph, Joe Flacco, Trevor Siemian, Bailey Zappi, Taylor Heineke, Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell, Tyrod Taylor, Jacoby Brissett, Jarrett Stidham, Easton Stick, and Jake Browning. So we talk about the quarterback lineups. I just wanted to add real quick, because you mentioned it right before we went into the show open here, is it's almost worse for the Josh Allens, the Patrick Mahomes of the world, if you are in the state you're in, if you miss the playoffs, or if you in Patrick Mahomes' case, getting ready to play his first road playoff game. Like, this is kind of embarrassing when the league gave you all of the opportunities that you'll probably ever get in your NFL career, starting with Aaron Rodgers going down in the AFC and then all of the subsequent injuries that we've had this year. It just makes it that much more amazing what the Browns, for instance, are doing with how many injuries they've had this year. To me, Kevin Stefanski's coach of the year almost pretty much locked in. I mean, the fact that they had this playoff berth, but yeah, it's wild, the quarterback terrain out there. And it's even more wild that the Chiefs are in the state they're in, that the Bills are still fighting for a playoff spot. It's crazy year.
It really is, and I think when you look back on the Thursday night football game, and by the way, Jacoby Brissett has like a hamstring twinge just I saw, so he may not even play against the Niners. They might have to go back to Sam Howell. What I will say, and I know we'll talk about Russell Wilson and the benching here coming on up shortly, but like when you look at this year, when we look back at this year as a whole, one that's going to be the storyline for the teams, for the players like a Josh Allen, for the Mahomes, the guys who made it through the season healthy, for Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott, and Lamar Jackson now is a huge name in this too.
Yeah, they're taking advantage of it.
If you don't win it this year, you may have missed your window, right? I was joking. I'm good buddies with a diehard Ravens fan. And he is just on cloud nine after that Niners win and everything. And I've already just started to joke with him, like, dude, it's an asterisk year. Like, you're going to win. This is an asterisk year. This is like a LeBron James bubble championship. It's an asterisk. You know what I mean? Did you really win? I was like, if you don't beat Mahomes and Allen in the playoffs, and then you go on to the Super Bowl and you beat the Lions, the Detroit Lions in the Super Bowl, does that really count as a Super Bowl win? Like asterisks, you know what I mean? But that's kind of what this year is leading up for. And if you're a Kansas City Chiefs fan, you got to be really kicking yourself because you're like, wait a minute, all of these breaks went our way. If we would have just invested a little bit more in the wide receiver room, we could be running away with this thing. And if you are any of those other teams, the Lamars, the Bills, the Jacksonville Jaguars right now have got to be really frustrated as a fan base, because this should have been the year you could try to take advantage of all these openings, and it doesn't look like it's going to happen. And maybe, except the Cleveland Browns are doing it, Joe Flacco's doing it. I don't know if if the clock will strike midnight on Joe Flacco anytime soon and he'll turn into a pumpkin. I don't know. I don't know if Cinderella, the glass slipper, is going to fall off his shoe. But right now, they are the hottest team in football, besides the Baltimore Ravens. And they beat the Ravens earlier in the year. I mean, they can beat this Ravens team because they're in division. They know each other well. And they won that game last night, Dan. You got to remember, they don't have Chubb. They don't have they didn't have Amari Cooper last night. They're missing key offensive linemen and defensive players.
Jack Conklin, their tackle, Jedrick Wills, Jawan Jones, like they lost all of their tackles.
So I don't know if that's
crazy.
a good or a bad thing as far as the longevity of Cleveland. I'll just say it's really impressive what Cleveland's doing. It's a fun story right now. And for the Browns, who a lot like the Lions for so many years, we all kind of had a soft spot in our heart for them because they're just the lovable losers like Cleveland and Detroit. You throw in some other teams like there, Washington, you kind of heartbreaks them because their owner was so bad for the last 20 years. Chicago can never get it going multiple years in a row. There's some of those, kind of downtrodden franchises that you're like, oh, come on, I'll root for you a little bit. I have a soft spot in my heart. Well, the Browns completely ruined that 2 years ago when they did what they did with Deshaun Watson, and they became public enemy number one. And how quickly they've just become back to like, oh no, this is an awesome, fun story. And we'll see how it all ends and what it concludes with. Unlike Denver right now, that is an ugly story, which again, a lot of people are turning on Denver and kind of rightfully so. And it's weird to see players actually come out in support of Russ because so many guys have just for so long crapped on Russ. Now you're seeing guys come out and support him with his benching. So it's a topsy-turvy NFL right now, heading into a giant weekend with some really big matchups.
Yeah, so we'll for those watching on YouTube, we'll share the screen here and kind of walk through the playoff seeding as it stands right now. So in the AFC, 4 available playoff spots remain. So we have the Ravens, Dolphins, and Browns that have all clinched a playoff spot. There are 3 spots up for grabs in the NFC. The 49ers, Eagles, Lions, and Cowboys all have clinched a playoff berth. Of course, nobody has clinched a specific seed as of right now, so that is still all in flux. The 1 seeds are up for grabs, and obviously some matchups this week will be big in determining how those chips fall as we go on. In the hunt here, as we go down, Chiefs, Jags, Bills, and Colts are all kind of hovering there in the seeding in the AFC. The Buccaneers, Rams, and Seahawks currently in good positioning as well. But all of these other teams here still very much in play. Even your Chicago Bears have somehow an outside chance of getting to the postseason.
They do.
But you see these
a 1% chance.
1% chance. You'll take it for sure. So that's kind of where we stand right now. Heading into week 17, a lot of this will change after this week, which is why these games are so incredibly important. Coming up here, in the next few days, we're going to have a lot to talk about next week, and of course, the week after going into the postseason.
Dan, I think as we get into it, we'll talk so much about the importance of some of these matchups. A lot of, to me, what I'm focusing in on is that 2 seed in the NFC. I think that's going to become a really hotly contested race. I feel like we're like on the political board, like Steve Warnacki or whatever it is on NBC. I'm in my khakis. You know what I mean? I'm touching the big board. That's, it's a too close to call in Ohio right now. That 2 seed in the NFC is going to be a fascinating race. The Lions still can win the 1 seed. I think they might actually have a real chance to get it. But if they don't, getting that all-important 2 seed is going to be crucial because it looks as though the way the NFC is going to shake out is that you're going to have most likely either the Eagles or the Cowboys at 5, and then a really solid team that's playing good football like a Rams at 6, which then opens the possibility for the 7 seed is going to be a Bears, a Saints, a Packers, a Seahawks, a team that is a Vikings, a team that is really beatable. And so can you lock up that 2 seed to secure the home game? And also, even though you don't get the bye, you get the most winnable first round matchup. That is going to be the one to really keep an eye out for, in my opinion.
Yeah, still super valuable. Obviously, you want the 1 seed to get that lock in that home field advantage throughout, but it is very impactful to have that 2 seed. You get the best matchups, as you mentioned, and you have a very good chance of hosting multiple home playoff games as opposed to, 4 seed or any of those wild card spots for
Yeah.
sure. So yeah, lots to look forward to as we kind of move through those rankings and see how that shakes out moving forward. But let's look at some of the matchups this week then as we kind of preview week 17 here. We mentioned the Browns beating the New York Jets 37-20, so they get the victory there on Thursday night. We have one Saturday game that belongs to the Lions at the Cowboys. Huge game. This is a very important one. Obviously, we saw the seeding there. Lions need to win this one to keep their hopes for that 1 seed alive. The Cowboys needing to win here so that they can still potentially take the NFC East the division away from the Philadelphia Eagles and put themselves in contention for that 2 seed. So these are big ones. I think the Cowboys actually could still get the 1 seed as well if they win out and have some help along the way too. So this is a huge game. The Cowboys obviously hosting. They're a much different team at home than they are on the road. But the Lions, they're scrappy, Mark, and they've obviously had somewhat of a resurgence here lately. They had a little bit of a down, but the down portion of the season, but they've gotten a little bit more healthy now. Amon-Ra St. Brown is doing what he does. Jameson Williams has become more involved in the offense as of late, and they've been winning without Sam Laporta having huge numbers and performances. Yeah. So I feel like that's got to be encouraging for Detroit. Meanwhile, the Cowboys, who have stumbled here, are probably going to be extra motivated coming home after 2 straight losses, trying to right their wrongs from 2 road games. And now they get their final home game of the season. So obviously a lot of emotion here for Dallas and Detroit alike. But I feel like Dallas probably has a little bit more emotional, investment in this game. But to your point, I mean, the Lions haven't been in this position for decades. So I feel like they're going to be plenty motivated to, fight for that 1 seed here in this one. And I personally would take the Lions to win this game.
It's a perfect trap game, right? In the idea that like Dallas comes home after 2 bad losses on the road to Buffalo and Miami. They're licking their wounds. They're fighting, scrapping, clawing still for the division. And the Lions were popping champagne and smoking cigars last week. And so you think, okay, one team's going to have that little bit of a hangover. The other team's going to be the highly motivated team at home. Listen, the Detroit defense has played better as of late. It's still not anything special or to write home about. And Dallas, we know their offense is electric. And at home, their defense plays really good football. But I'm with you. I'm on Detroit this game. I actually think you're going to see a Detroit team that comes out extremely motivated. I think Dan Campbell's the type of guy, and this team, the way it's built, is not the type of team that is going to just rest on, oh, we won the division, that's great. I really think this Lions team is going to come out and they match up, in my opinion, just really well against Dallas. What Dallas does well, the Detroit Lions could take advantage of. Like it's strength on strength, and I trust Detroit's strength. Their offensive line can hold up against the pressure that Dallas will try to bring. And then, listen, Dallas likes to play man coverage, and Detroit's got a ton of man beaters in Amon-Ra St. Brown and Laporta and Williams. That they got speed, they have weapons, and Jared Goff is extremely accurate, especially in the play action game. Listen, I think Dallas is going to come out desperate. I think this is going to be an over game. I think it's going to be a kind of last team that has the ball type score, 30-27, a high scoring. This is Monday Night Football on Saturday, primetime. Jimmy Johnson being entered into the Cowboys Ring of Honor. So I think there's a lot of, you're absolutely right, a lot of emotion for Dallas, a kind of a must win, it feels like, for Dallas. But remember, 4 weeks ago, what did I keep saying about Dallas? They're going to lose, 4 straight. Now they beat Philly, but then what did I was right. And they lost to Miami and they lost to Buffalo. Part of this streak of losing was losing to Detroit. I'm not going to waver off of that. I predicted it to go this way. I'm going to stick with it. I like Detroit in this game, and I like it to be a sneaky type of game where Jared Goff has the type of game where you start maybe after the game looking around going, wait a minute. If the Lions get the 1 seed, Jared Goff's numbers are pretty damn good. Why is Jared Goff not maybe in talks for a possible MVP sneak in ballot, especially if the Dolphins find a way to beat the Ravens and Lamar stumbles a bit. Maybe you go to that next one in line. I think players aren't dumb. The Lions, if they win out and the Eagles win out, the Lions will be ahead of them for the 1 seed. The Lions don't need the Eagles to lose. Right now, the only reason the Lions are behind the Eagles because of strength of victories. Like, that's the only tiebreaker. But because the Lions play the Cowboys, and then they play another team that's close to 500, where the Eagles are stuck on the stretch of Giants, I think Commanders, Giants, or something really, below 500 teams, that will flip. And so the Lions will win out if they'll get the 1 seed, if they win out and the Eagles win out, knowing that the Niners just have to slip up again. And the Niners have a very losable game next week, week 18, versus the Rams. So I think the Lions know that, and I think they're going to stay motivated and hungry. I like the Lions in this game.
Yeah, Dallas favored by 6 in this game. I would take that all day from the Lions' perspective.
+6 for sure.
Even
just take the money. Take the number.
Take the number. Yeah. Take that spread if you can get it for sure. Speaking of trap game, the Bills play host to the New England Patriots. Would there be any more motivated coach to play spoiler than Bill Belichick after the year he's had? He's already matched his worst loss total of a season with 11 losses. If he loses this game, it'll be the worst in his career. The guy doesn't need much motivation to compete. He's a competitor, of course. He's the best coach in history. But that being said, the Buffalo Bills have so much to play for here. Their backs are against the wall, and they're riding a 3-game winning streak. So it's like, are they going to mess up and take this win streak for granted and say, wow, the Patriots are terrible? Are they going to do what the Steelers did earlier this year, where it's like, oh, we can't lose to this team? And no, the New England Patriots can still find a way to be feisty and somehow win. Obviously, the Bills have way more talent here. I would pick them to win, but it's dangerous. It's a dangerous situation. The Bills play at home, but New England's used to that climate. This could shape up to be a situation where Bill Belichick gets one final dig at the Bills before potentially his way out of New England. So what are your thoughts on this matchup, where obviously the Bills are the only team playing for anything meaningful in terms of the 2023 season?
I wouldn't call this the trap game. I'd call this the look ahead game, right? Like, their eyes are on Miami next week. Now, they survived the trap game, which you had last week with the Chargers, because the Chargers gave them everything they could handle. I think they were up 13-0, interim head coach, everyone. It was just that rah-rah effort, right? And the Bills found a way to win that game. That gives me confidence that they will find a way to win this game, right? Like, last week was the one where it's like, I was really nervous about Buffalo because the interim, traveling across the country, you're expected to win. The Chargers just got blown out, like embarrassed. And so they were able to survive that, which means, to me, mentally, they're a tougher team than I think we give them enough credit for, and credit to Sean McDermott and his staff for doing that. Also, I think Buffalo absolutely knows that winning out is the key for them. Like, I think they're in playoff mode at this point in time, and they don't need to be motivated to beat Bill Belichick and the Patriots. The line is 13. I would maybe take the Patriots plus 13. I think it could end up being closer than you think. The other reason I don't believe in New England to win this game is they won a really ugly game against Denver last week, right? And Bailey Zappi played about as good as Bailey Zappi could play. I don't know if we're going to get back-to-back Bailey Zappi playing good games. You know what I mean? Like, it's going to take that to win. And I think that the fact that Buffalo has found their run game and they're at home, the number, if you're looking for the value, I think the value is in the Patriots plus 13. But I still think Buffalo's going to win this game.
Yeah, I'm seeing Buffalo by 14 here on the ESPN app.
I would take it even more than plus 14.
I mean, that's a huge spread. Those hardly ever pay out. So that's
I think
for sure.
Us as fans, and again, I speak a little bit of like what I want to happen. You try to truly analyze it, but you can't help but what you want to happen. I want Buffalo to win and for the Ravens to win. And so we get the showdown week 18, Buffalo, Miami, winner takes the division. How do you not want that? Like, that's what
I'll tell you how, if you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, you do not want that to happen. But I can understand from the NFL perspective, you want epic games in Week 18, that would certainly be one, for sure. Let's move forward to the Atlanta Falcons, who are playing against your Chicago Bears. The Bears
Bear down.
playing for that 1% playoff chance, but obviously the Falcons playing for a way to stay afloat in the NFC South, which is so tight right now. And we have another NFC South matchup coming up, which will be very impactful to that division. But the Falcons need to win to go to 8-8 and have a prayer at taking this division.
Yeah.
If they lose, I don't know what the scenario is, but I feel like that would be close to elimination for Atlanta, if not elimination.
I think it would be. I think they're like the Bears where they need a ton of help. The Bears, they need the Rams to lose out, the Seahawks to lose out, which are possible, but the Rams are on the road against the Giants. I mean, they need a lot of help. I don't think, for me, I'm not looking Bears playoffs right now. It's fun to joke about. But for me, what I'm looking for in this game is, hey, Atlanta is the team that everyone always says that they should trade for Justin Fields, right? They're the team that everyone says they should trade for Justin Fields. So Justin Fields grew up in Georgia. He was a Georgia recruit before he transferred to Ohio State, where he led them to a national title game. And, handed Trevor Lawrence one of his only 2 losses in college football. And I will say, I think this is a put money on Justin Fields on over everything. Atlanta's defense is really shaky. The Bears are at home, so he's got a lot working for him, right? That defense is going to be in the cold, out of the dome, in Chicago. He's got that kind of Atlanta connection. Everyone back home is going to maybe come up for this game or watch this game. He grew up as a Falcons fan. There's a lot of just that like good vibes for Justin Fields to have one of those surprise games where he shows, every 3 or 4 weeks when he's healthy, he has that spring game, right? 100 yards rushing, 220 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, a rushing touchdown, no interceptions, and he looks like the second coming of Michael Vick. And that's at times what Justin Fields can do. The problem has always been consistently him doing it. I feel like this is ripe for this type of moment. And again, the Bears just hurting themselves in the draft stock and making it all the more confusing for their fan base. And for me, every day, week in and week out, whenever I go anywhere, everyone asks me, Justin Fields, what are you doing? I think it's 90% of my conversations in life in general at this point in time are about Justin Fields and what are we doing? And so, yeah, I like the Bears in this game. They're at home, Atlanta, indoor birds, outdoors on the lake front, windy, cold, a little wet, chilly. It's been snowing here. Taylor Heineke. Yeah, I just think there's a lot that points to Chicago's favor this weekend. And that defense, listen, the Bears defense has been playing extremely good football since the Montez Sweat trade. And I think they can take advantage of this Atlanta offense for sure.
Yeah, Atlanta has run its course at this point, I think, and they've reached their ceiling. They may eke out another win, but I don't have them winning out the rest of the way. So my best bet is they lose this game, and we'll see what happens in Week 18. But I think it's going to be between the Bucs and the Saints with that matchup coming up in just a little bit. But first, we'll focus on the Raiders at the Colts. The Raiders trying to continue that Antonio Pierce magic from the interim head coach, while the Colts are really trying to hang on to that, wild card seeding there that they have currently, but a loss to the Colts would really make things complicated and would put them in a position where they do not control their own destiny. So right now, the Colts in desperate need of a win here. They are favored to win this game against the Raiders, who have Aiden O'Connell running it back for the team. But obviously, and the Colts do get Michael Pittman back, it seems like. He has cleared concussion protocol, but has not been named active for the game yet, but I anticipate that will come in the next day. And so that's big. They get their wide receiver 1 back, Jonathan Taylor back for his, second full game from injury. So the Colts are bringing their full, slate of playmakers here. No Zach Moss, but with Jonathan Taylor, you don't need him. So, as a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, I want the Colts to lose. But I'm really in a position where the Colts are playing well. They're getting healthy at the right time. And the Raiders just are starting to not, hang on to that magic that we saw earlier this season from Antonio Pierce and company. They're still good. Still think that he should be the head coach, but I think the Colts have more in this game, and they're at home too. So if there's even a 50-50 split, I'm going to give the edge to the home team here, and that happens to be Indy.
The Raiders won their Super Bowl last week. They're not getting. I don't think they're going back to back. They beat the Chiefs.
They squeezed every ounce of juice out of that one
on Christmas Day. It was an incredible win. The Chiefs looked like poop, and they won that game with their quarterback not throwing a pass in the second half. It's an insane win.
Which not just the second half, the last three quarters. I think it was just past the first quarter.
It was an ugly win for the Raiders, but I think they play well in this game. I think they play against the Colts well. I think they get up, but I'm with you. The Colts, better team. They have more to play for right now. Their path is still really in front of them. This is a really winnable game at home. I don't see the Colts slipping up here. I like Gardner Minshew to actually be able to move the ball. Pittman coming back. I'm going to roll with the Colts in this one, and then that eliminates the Raiders, and I think that's probably the right thing. And let's start getting rid of. There's so many of these 7-8, 8-7 teams. We got to start separating and get rid of some teams. So part of my desire for the Colts to win is to just be like, all right, I don't have to worry about scenarios anymore.
Yeah, I think one thing that going into next year's preview, I'll try and be more cognizant of is having more middle of the road teams, because coming into the year with the predictions, I think I had a lot of 5 to 6 win teams, but as we're seeing, there's a lot of 7, 8 win teams out there right now. And that's really what's packed into the middle of the NFL. One of those teams is the Los Angeles Rams at 8-7. They go on the road at the Giants, who will be turning to Tyrod Taylor to start for the remainder of the season. But the Rams, as we've talked about here, very much playing for the playoffs, which I didn't anticipate being the case at this time of year, but they have really played well down the stretch here. They too are a healthy unit. And so the Rams are 5.5-point favorites. They have a lot riding on this game. If they lose, they are then also talking about multiple scenarios where they don't control their own fate in week 18. And nobody wants that to be the case in the final game of the regular season. So the Rams with a really good opportunity here to solidify themselves in the NFC playoff race. How do you see this one playing out in week 17?
I love the Rams. I picked them to win the division. That's not going to happen. But I think, my gut feeling on the Rams has really come true. Now, I didn't know Puka Nacua would be Puka Nacua, who he is, and he's phenomenal. He's been fantastic. But I will say I think the Rams are a lock for this game. They're playing a brand of football right now that can travel, whether it's home, away, good teams, bad teams. No one has played the Ravens close in the last 10 weeks except for the Rams and the Browns. And that says a lot about the type of team the Rams are right now. They lost on the road in Baltimore on a punt return in overtime. That's how close that game was. And so I think the Rams are a team that, again, sees their future in front of them, sees the opportunity they have to be able to win out and get themselves a date with a possible Bucs team or a possible Cowboys or Eagles team that they could match up pretty well against in the first round of the playoffs. And I think it's Matt Stafford playing great football, those wide receivers against that back end of that Giants defense. I'm going to trust the Rams. But part of it is I like Tyrod Taylor. I think Tyrod is a really, really solid spot starting quarterback in the NFL. But there's a lot of back and forth and lack of continuity. And the Tommy DeVito thing was kind of fun. Now it feels like the Giants are just back to being okay, they're just not. Yeah, they're just not good. And
that ran its magic. A lot of people comparing it to the Jeremy Lin.
It is very similar.
Surge, yeah,
very similar. And I think that's just over now. And so I think you'll see a Giants team that understands the best thing for us to do is to lose, and a Rams team that knows that they're playing for a lot more right now.
Yeah, for sure, no question. All right, moving forward to the Cardinals at the Philadelphia Eagles. Cardinals, obviously nothing to play for here. Actually, they have something to lose for here.
Yeah, exactly.
But the Philadelphia Eagles, obviously, with that 1 seed still in sight, and they're sitting there at 11-4. 12-4 would really put them in a good position here to potentially get that 1 seed, but also further help them get that grasp on the NFC East title that the Dallas Cowboys still have in play. So the Eagles, obviously, with a lot to play for here, at home against a Cardinals team that's obviously better with Kyler Murray, but they're still not a formidable bunch. Eagles got back in the win column last week against the Giants that snapped a 3-game losing streak. So you'd like to think that they are back in gear. Cardinals this week, Giants again in week 18. This should end the season on a 3-game winning streak for the Philadelphia Eagles if they are a team to be taken seriously. So with that being said, I do think that they refine their groove, put themselves in a good position to launch into the playoffs behind a lot of momentum. So I actually have them winning pretty handily here against the Cardinals and doing so against the Giants in week 18 as well. Maybe not getting the 1 seed. I will, the 49ers have themselves a pretty, decent shot at that too. But I have the Philadelphia Eagles getting one step closer this week.
Yeah, the saying is a win's a win, right? Like you just need to win the game. It's kind of how I feel about Buffalo this week. I don't really feel that way about Philly. A win won't just be a win for Philly. They need to win this game. They need to come out early, dominate early, pad some stats, get your mojo back, and beat the crap out of a bad team, and really give yourself that confidence offensively. Hit a couple big plays, score a couple easy touchdowns, defensively cause some havoc, let some guys tee off, pat some stats, and get out of Dodge, win this thing by 17, 20 or more points. Like that's how you'd feel good. If this game is again like last week where they get out early and they let the Cardinals back in and then it feels like they hang on to dear life for a victory, your faith in the Eagles will just be that. It'll be a coin flip. Like they can score with anyone, but can they consistently do it? They just haven't shown it over the last 4 weeks. So they need to come on out and have a dominating win. I'll take the Eagles to win. I hope they win big, but I'm not sure. I feel confident they'll win, but a win's not just a win for them this week.
No, yeah, it definitely has more meaning to it for sure. One of the probably I didn't think I'd be saying that the Saints Bucks would be such a must watch affair, but at this point in the season here, both these teams are playing for the NFC South division title. If the Buccaneers win, I believe they clinch it.
Yep.
Yes, they would. So the Bucks can absolutely clinch this one. The Saints would put themselves in a position to still get to the playoffs and clinch the division title pending what happens in week 18. So the Saints are basically playing for their playoff lives. The Buccaneers playing to just secure it now and maybe give themselves an opportunity to rest some people in week 18, which would be crazy to think that they'd even be in that position. But the Buccaneers have been surging lately. The Saints have kind of had this roller coaster pretty much the whole second half of the season here. So Saints have more to prove, but the Bucks have so much on the line in terms of making all of this worth it, and so that's kind of a lot of pressure for the Bucks.
I'm all on the Bucks of this one, and I know that kind of scares me because it seems so obvious. They're at home, they win, they lock it up, and then they can rest players against the Panthers next week, and then they'd host a playoff game. Like it seems so easy, and like this is how it makes sense. And so, and also New Orleans is one of those really volatile teams that we've seen them go on the road early in the season, like against New England, and beat New England. What was that? It was like 30-0 at like halftime. Like this is a team that when they put things together and they actually, play sound football, can be an impressive football team. But the problem is they are the most inconsistent team maybe in the NFL right now. And I'll say this, at this point in time, I don't think Todd Bowles is a great coach. I think he's a fine coach. I think he's a good coach. I know Dennis Allen is a bad coach. And I know the Bucks are having a lot of fun and they are playing with house money. And I know there's a lot of pressure in New Orleans. And those fans are frustrated. The team is committed to Derek Carr in this big contract they signed him to in the offseason. They don't like their head coach and they shouldn't like their head coach. I'm going to go with the vibes on this one and just trust that we think the Bucks will win. the Bucs are the better team. It makes sense that the Bucs will win. I'm just going to stick with that and say the Bucs win. Now, knowing that, we'll be looking at that game and be like, "Oh my God, the Saints are up 24-7," and like, what the hell happened? You know what I mean? But
Sure.
I'm going to trust my gut in this, saying that the Tampa Bay's been playing really. It's not that Tampa Bay's been beating up a bunch of bad teams. They've just been playing really good football against some okay teams and taking care of business. I think they do the same again in division at home. I heard a stat somewhere today. I think it was on Pardon My Take. New Orleans is playing an outdoor game for the first time since like mid-October.
That's
Like,
crazy.
I know it's in Tampa. It's not like it'd be bad weather or something, but I just like, I'm going to stick with Tampa, roll with Tampa. And then I think Tampa will and smartly should rest guys next week, which makes me very nervous because that means the Panthers might get their third win of the year. And then I don't know how that works for tiebreakers, all that stuff. So there's a lot on the line for me.
That's for sure. But the Bears will still have a very juicy pick to sell. But yes, the number one pick obviously holds much more weight. The 49ers go on the road to the Commanders. If Jacoby Brissett doesn't get the start, then it's back to Sam Howell, who has had a really rough go the last month or so. I feel like this is a win either way for the 49ers. Jacoby Brissett, little rusty, not super good. And yeah, he may not turn the ball over as much as Sam Howell has. But if you're the 49ers, you're not really scared of any of this. And on top of it, Brock Purdy's coming off of a 4-interception game. They're not going to remotely, touch
the Commanders
that
are dead
here against the Commanders. So it's
They're
over
dead.
for Washington. And the 49ers will probably rout them in this game.
This is the worst spot to be in the world if you're the Washington Commanders. But actually, this is what they want because about 5 weeks ago,
you go to 4-12. I mean,
about 5 weeks ago, they made the not so public decision to basically go into tank mode. They traded Sweat, they traded Chase Young, and they've lost ever since. And I think this is a perfect way for them to just be an absolute punching bag for the Niners, who are going to be angry, who are going to be frustrated. And the Niners know they can still get the 1 seed if they go 1-1 down the stretch here. But that's like, they can't go 0-2 and win the 1 seed. So they got to win. This one's the gimme. The Rams game will be a tough one. I like the Niners big in this game for sure. I think Purdy bounces back. I'll say this, we didn't obviously get to recap the games from last week. I'll just say this about that game on Monday Night Football. I don't think that the 49ers are now a bad team. And they didn't play necessarily a really bad game. What my feeling from that game was, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, Dan, was that the Ravens just are a fantastic matchup against the Niners. Because what the Niners do really well with Brock Purdy is really quickly distribute the ball to their playmakers in space, and then they let Debo, they let Ayuk, they let McCaffrey, and they let Kittle get the yak. The Ravens are the best gang tackling team in the NFL. That's like a real stat. And they are, when you watch the game, you can see it. Guys catch the ball, and there's 3 Ravens on them. I mean, it's wild. And that's why I'm really concerned if I am Kansas City having to play Baltimore, if I'm a team like the Niners having to play Baltimore again. Teams like the Bills, they don't play the game the same way that that Kansas City and San Francisco do. They could just take advantage of Baltimore because they're just going to try to beat you one-on-one with deep plays. They're not get guys in space and then hope for a yak, right? That's just not, it's a different type of offense. And that's why I think Miami's in real trouble. We'll talk about that coming on up here. But I just wanted to quickly say, I'm still high on the Niners. The problem the Niners are going to face is the next time they play the Ravens might be in the Super Bowl, and the Ravens just are a bad matchup for them. But the Niners will have revenge on their side, so they'll that'll play some sort of factor into it.
Well, they have one glaring weakness, which could be a problem come playoff time. I mean, this was really, genius scheming by the Baltimore Ravens and prepping. Their biggest issue, the 49ers, is that if they are taken off script, they're in shambles almost, right?
They can't play from behind.
Most teams can't take them off script because they're that good at dialing up a script. And they have too many playmakers to where they'll find the open guy quick anyways.
Totally.
But if you are able to neutralize their weapons early, they don't have the capability to improvise and create outside of structure. And so that is the way to beat the San Francisco 49ers. First and foremost, you have to stop the run, which is the Ravens' ability to kind of take McCaffrey out of it. Really puts everything on the shoulders of Brock Purdy, and if the rest kind of takes care of itself with the scheming, then you're good to go. So yes, that the one glaring weakness, if they can get their rhythm in a game, then it's pretty much over for the opposing team. The Panthers go on the road to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and what I thought maybe 3 weeks ago even would have been a gimme game. The Jacksonville Jaguars have really stumbled the last 2 months of the season, honestly. Trevor Lawrence has not been playing well. Granted, he's been hurt for probably half the season here, and he is still banged up with that high ankle sprain. Looks like he's going to play. Then the concussions. Now it's the shoulder injury that's popped up. It's looking like he wants to play, and they very well might have to have him go out there, even though you would like to think that this is a game that they could afford to not have Trevor Lawrence in. I'm not sure that's the case, and this is a must-win for Jacksonville. At 8-7, they are still fighting to have the AFC South. They're kind of lucky that C.J. Stroud wasn't available for the Houston Texans
the last 2 games,
couple weeks, because if he was, the Texans would be the leaders in the AFC South, and the Jacksonville Jaguars would be playing for their lives, their playoff lives, and hoping for a wild card spot. They're lucky to be in the position they are, but this is a must win. And, they're just, who knows? I mean, man, the Panthers could win this game. I would take the Jacksonville Jaguars, obviously, Mark. But I don't know. If they have to start CJ Beathard, what's going to happen? Crazier things have happened, and the Panthers are still trying to win games with Bryce Young and still trying to do something. So it could be one of those nights for the Jacksonville Jaguars and a season that just crumbles in front of our very eyes.
Jags got really lucky that the Colts and the Texans lost last week in their loss as well.
Huge.
And so I'm back on the Jags. I think this is a Jags. This is their get right game. I really do think that, and that's not just me saying as a Bears fan, I really need the Panthers to lose, but which I do. That's very obvious. But all signs point to Trevor Lawrence and this offense being able to use the Panthers to just find some momentum, right? Get your run game going, get the play action pass going again, hit a couple big plays and get out of Dodge, right? And then live to week 18, fight like heck in week 18, clinch that division, and then you're hosting a home playoff game again. And they made it to the second round last year. And, you never know what can happen if you get the right draw in the playoffs. You never know how all that shapes out. So I think Jacksonville's setting themselves up for a very similar type season to what they had last year. I think the problem is it was kind of unexpected last year with Jacksonville to pop that quickly and to be as fun as they were. This year has just been a slog. It has been hard. Even when they were winning at 8-3. It didn't look right. They weren't dominating teams. You know what I mean? Yeah. They've been a lot like Philly this year, where the record was good, but it didn't seem 100% right. And now the record's not good. And now they're, lost 4 straight. It's just getting ugly for Jacksonville. Must win. I think they take care of business.
We've got 5 games to get to remaining here in Week 17. But first, we'll pause for a quick word from the For Frequency's Sake Podcast Network. The NBA season is in full swing, and of course, the NFL season is just ramping up to the playoffs. So we've got you covered with plenty of shows covering all of your needs, from fantasy to betting to just commentary, like us here on the Football Lounge. So take a listen. We hope you enjoy. And be sure to like and subscribe anywhere you can.
For Frequency's Sake has you covered on all things sports. From the squared circle to the hardwood and the gridiron to the speedway, we've got something for everyone. Walk down the aisle with the boys from Cards Subject to Change every Sunday as they take a deep dive into everything pro wrestling. Need your gambling fix? We've got you there. Enter Pit Row with Rod Villagomez and Fast Money as we win the checkered flag with NASCAR, Xfinity, and truck race winners and props. Football more your style? Explore the waters of NFL DFS with DFS Deep Dive with Brian Craighead and Jordan Kernan each week. More into the science portion of the game? We've got a double dose of action there. The Professor John Bush and Dennis Michelson take you into their science lab and dissect your week in the data lab. Want an analytical take? Nick Gurl and the team at Gridiron AI come to you each week with The Lab. Need to know who to start last minute? The network's flagship show, For Fantasy's Sake, is here in a pinch. The fellas come to you live every football Sunday from 10 to 11:30 Central with the week's best DFS, gambling, and lineup advice. And wrap up your Sundays with Joe Winkle and Nick Brinks as they come to you live with educated ignorance looking at all the day's action. Can't get enough of Joe? He comes to you 3 times a week. Not enough football on Sunday? Not a problem. Kick your feet up at lunch on Monday and slip on into the football lounge with Mark and Dan while they look at the week that was in news, notes, and more. For frequency's sake, you know what we mean.
All right, so let's move on to the Tennessee Titans at the Houston Texans. Titans, of course, have already been eliminated from the playoff contention, but the Houston Texans still have a shot at the AFC South title and a wild card if possible. They're getting CJ Stroud back. Big moment here for Houston. Hopefully that there's not much rust for their sake on the part of CJ Stroud. Meanwhile, the Titans are turning back to Will Levis, who is healthy and will start this game. So, for those who are looking for the AFC seeding shakeup, Will Levis here for the Titans, might make this one a little bit more difficult for the Texans to pull off, but the Texans still, of course, favored in this game to win. They would go to 9-7 if they do so and really put the pressure there on Jacksonville and the rest of the AFC in the race here. So what are your thoughts on this matchup? Is Houston, I mean, obviously they're deserving the way they've played this year.
Oh, yeah.
But do they feel like a playoff team in your eyes?
Well, I mean, the fact that they stole a game with Case Keenum and were able to stay alive a little bit in the 2 weeks that CJ was out. Listen, again, Houston is playing with such house money, and I think they know that too. And I think there's a looseness. They're so young; they don't know they almost don't know the pressure yet, right? Rookie head coach, led by a star rookie quarterback. Now, yeah, I like Houston a lot in this spot. I think Houston will go in, take care of business. Tennessee's not going to make it easy. Tennessee is Mike Vrabel tough. They're going to battle. I love how creative they're getting with some of the Derrick Henry stuff here in the last couple of weeks. It'll be a fun game. I think this will be a fun game to watch, but I'll take Houston winning tight. CJ Stroud kind of does it again, late game heroics to keep the Texans alive. At this point in time, I kind of want Jacksonville to win the division and for Houston to find a way into a wild card spot. I think that would be a possible fun matchup to see Houston, on the road at a Buffalo or at a Kansas City in round 1. I think could be really fun, and so I'm kind of rooting for something like that.
That would be exciting, no question. I think the way Houston's played this year, D'Amico Ryans, what he's done with that club, I'd like to see them in the postseason. Pittsburgh and Seattle are both in very similar situations. They're both fighting for their playoff lives as well.
They both need to win.
They both need to win. Both need to win out. And Pittsburgh going on the road for this game will start Mason Rudolph. That became official today. So it will be Mason Rudolph yet again. The right move for Pittsburgh after performance they got from him. That was the best quarterback performance that the Steelers have gotten, which is, kind of sad to say, but it was objectively just a good quarterback performance against Cincinnati this past week. Different here on the road, hostile environment against, an overall probably better team in Seattle. It's going to be a tough test for Pittsburgh. Seattle, obviously, is putting in the position here with, Geno Smith back and trying to make a run at this thing.
Great win last week. Yeah,
it was big. It was a big win for them. So, obviously an emotional one for Drew Lock and company too. So, there's just a lot of things, working on both sides of this equation. This is probably one of those games where it's fairly even. It somewhat feels like the Saints Buccaneers matchup, although I think we both agree the Bucs are probably going to win that game. This one's hard for me to tell. Maybe I'm, creeping a little bias into here, but I do think the Steelers win. It's just kind of that Mike Tomlin thing where, he just ends up getting the team to rally no matter what the cause and what the situation. I just feel like Pittsburgh always puts themselves into this very dramatic week 18 do or die moment, and they play the Ravens week 18, it very well could be, winning in type of situation. And so just for history, and I do think Pittsburgh matches up at least decently well. I mean, Seattle's defense is pretty bad. So I'll give the edge to Steelers here, but I don't feel confident in that. I think it could go either way.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it is a very much a coin flip kind of either way game. It's just a tough travel week for Pittsburgh all the way to Seattle. And Seattle knows that they have a more clear path as far as winning out and getting in and having the chance to get in versus Pittsburgh does. Pittsburgh's got to, you need some things to really break and fall your way. Pittsburgh, to me, it's interesting is can Mason Rudolph do it 2 in a row, right? Can he find that magic and get that second one? I mean, obviously they fed Pickens, which was smart to do. Just he's the diva wide receiver, he's the star. Feed him because the other guys weren't feeding him enough. And hopefully it opens up other things. I would stick to that game plan, right? Seattle, their corners aren't exactly Pro Bowl all-world corners. Can you get the ball to Pickens as much as possible, and hopefully it opens up some play action, some other things with the run game to where you can stay alive in this game. Because the Seattle Seahawks, listen, Walker's a really fun running back. They have offensively, they're fun to watch, Seattle. So can Pittsburgh's defense hold up? I'm going to take Seattle because they're at home. It's a tough travel for Pittsburgh, and I just don't think Mason Rudolph could do it 2 weeks in a row. My question to you would be, before we move off this game, if Mason Rudolph wins it, do you just ride with Mason Rudolph the rest of the way? Or where's Kenny at health-wise? And this, the whole thing was he was supposed to be like 3 weeks, ankle sprain. That's why they got the surgery, get him back quicker. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
if it's ugly,
I mean, the optimistic view was this week, but most were saying, okay, even after surgery, week 18 would be the quickest. I think he's probably healthy. I mean, they haven't ruled him officially active or healthy for this game yet. But even if he was, I think knowing how Mike Tomlin has operated in the past, and just if you're Pittsburgh, I just don't see how you could do it, in the situation that they find themselves in. I think they had to go with Mason regardless this week. And yes, if he wins, if they get a victory, I think it has to be Mason the rest of the way, even in the playoffs. As much as you want to get Kenny Pickett playoff experience.
That's my thought.
And I guess it would depend what happens week 18 too, but I think he gets the start week 18. And I think there's a short leash. I think, if he gets the start week 18 and first quarter plays terribly, then you throw Kenny Pickett in there. But I think it's really hard for Pittsburgh to put Kenny Pickett back in a must-win game. And if he struggles, to then bench him again and put Mason Rudolph back in the game. I think that's a really volatile situation.
Yeah, you're right.
In there with the quarterback.
You're right.
I think you're much better off saying Mason has earned the right. He played the team played the best with him in there. He's at least staying in the pocket and going through progressions, which we hadn't seen from either of the quarterbacks. So I think he has a short leash. I think if he does struggle for a half, they'll put Kenny in there next week or this week, and then maybe ride it out the rest of the way. But no, if he wins, if he plays well, I think it's keep riding it. And Tomlin is a guy that's we're not going to change it for the sake of changing it. If it's working, we're not going to do it just because it feels right to play the rookie quarterback. I
just feel like you've just learned your answer though, because on Kenny Pickett and what his future should be. The thing is, it's so weird to think you have a chance in the really big moments for your franchise, and you have a guy who you're still undecided with if he could be your Mason Rudolph's not your franchise quarterback, but you want Kenny Pickett to be, right? You've invested in him. You want him to grow, and he would have this chance week 18 to beat a division rival if he's healthy enough to go, or in the playoffs, healthy enough to go and prove that he belongs, and to win a big game for your team. You'd like to see him get that chance. And I guess you could always argue, hey, he was struggling because he just, his ankle, even though he's medically cleared, the rust, and he just wasn't ready. And you could protect him maybe in that way from the media, right? If it got ugly and you benched him for Mason. But maybe the smart thing to do is you put Mason in there, and as soon as he shows any sort of wavering, if the leash is, if he wins this week and he struggles early against Baltimore, then you go to Kenny and you can just say, all right, Kenny, try to go win it for us and be a hero.
Yeah, and I think, it would crush Kenny's confidence if he started and then got benched again, right? So that's one thing you don't want to do with your young quarterback. But two, if the ultimate goal is to win, and you went with Mason Rudolph the final 2 weeks of the season, and you get to the playoffs and you're going to a playoff game, if the goal is to win, how in the world can you justify to your locker room that we won 3 games down the stretch to get ourselves into the playoffs
With a
to
guy.
play our best with Mason, and we're going to go back to Kenny?
I know.
If the goal is to win, you're really struggling or playing with fire in terms of the locker room and what's the true message that we're sending to the guys. Do you actually believe Kenny gives you the best chance after the injury?
Isn't that also a killer to Kenny's confidence? You're talking about killing Kenny's confidence. You pull him. I just think,
but you can always tell Kenny, look, man, you were injured. It sucks, but Mason stepped in. We were winning games. We had to ride the momentum. That's an easier sell to Kenny than, hey, we brought you back in, and oh nope, you're back to the bench because you.
I just think at this point you may have inadvertently learned your answer.
The guy, though.
Yeah,
he might not be the guy. And in next year, if Mason Rudolph, I'm not saying he's the franchise guy either, but next year you go into it and it's a legit competition, and you say maybe we do have to go through a year with Mason Rudolph as a starting quarterback. Kenny gets benched as the backup, and that either does wonders. He comes in week 3 next year and goes on this surge, and now he's the starting quarterback of the future. Or if he doesn't, Mason plays fine the rest of the year. You're back to where you're finding your franchise quarterback again. But I just think you have to go with the hot hand.
Or you just trade, 3 future first-round picks and Minkah Fitzpatrick to the Bears for the number 1 pick.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see about that. I don't know if the Pittsburgh would go that deep for it, but I wouldn't necessarily be upset at all. The Chargers go on the road to the Broncos. The Broncos have something to play for here, but clearly they're kind of signaling that it's done.
They're playing for can we pay Jarrett Stidham no money and he can start for us?
Yeah. Obviously, the big news coming out of the week is Sean Payton and the Denver Broncos announcing that they are benching Russell Wilson, the guy that they paid a boatload of money to, a boatload of picks to trade for. They are benching him the final 2 weeks of the season because they would owe him if he were to get injured in March of 2024. That would toll his contract guarantees in 2025 if he were injured. So they are protecting their pocketbook, and
they're trying to save
themselves an out here.
Yeah, it's about $40 million they're trying to save, right? I think it was like 39 million.
37, I believe.
And I think no matter what, if Denver moves on from Russ, correct me if I'm wrong, like it's going to be like the next 2 years.
They're going to owe a ton of money.
Yeah, the next 2 years are ugly. Now they can, in a trade, get someone to. The hope for Denver is you can trade him, right? And you can get that team to take on some of his contract, right? And there are a lot of teams that are going to need a quarterback. So I think there's a possibility you could. The problem is now Denver's also showed their cards, is that a lot of teams can look at Denver and go, why should we give you anything for him? You're just going to cut his ass in a couple weeks anyways. So it's a little bit of that, like you got to find the right buyer who wants to we want him. We don't want him to hit the market. We'll take him. We'll show him that love, and hopefully that rights the wrongs. There are some spots for him, and we'll have a lot of talk about that in the offseason. I will just say this. Who cares about this game? I think Denver wins. I think Stidham plays well, and I think it's all this kind of – it'll add to the juiciness of the story, right? Sure, that's going to be that's my prediction. Dan, this is what I want to talk to you about in this spot here, the couple minutes we have for this game. The best thing that happened to the Chicago Bears over the last 3 days was the benching of Russell Wilson and the benching of Sam Howell. 2 more organizations just showed you, and now maybe we're talking about the Steelers as another, just showed you we're waving the white flag in our starting quarterback. That adds another 2 teams to the pool of like the 5 or 6 teams we already know who are going to be aggressive in the quarterback market. And so that is great news for the Chicago Bears. Because now you can start really looking around at people saying, no. If you want the right, as of right now, again, knock on all the wood. Please, God, let the Bears end up at the number 1 pick. But if this is the way it goes, you can start really making phone calls and driving the price and get what you want, because the other teams now know they're not only competing against one other team, they're competing against 5, 6, 7 other teams for that right to draft the guy they want at that, before anyone else gets a chance to get their hands on him. And that's great news for the Bears as an organization. For, they got a haul for the last number 1 pick. They can get more for this number 1 pick, mainly because of supply and demand, and because this number 1 pick with the presumptive in Caleb Williams is a better prospect than Bryce Young was.
Yeah, no, very true. And I've seen a lot of rumors floating out there of Chicago Bears fan pages trying to will a Justin Herbert to the Bears trade. I got bad news. There's no reason for this LA Chargers to move off of Justin Herbert here, unless there was just this massive haul and complete reset that they're looking for. But that just doesn't make sense to me.
Can I just
say,
say,
franchise guy?
Can I just say it makes a tiny bit of sense, a tiny bit, in the sense that
Maybe.
They're in LA. They are desperate for fans. You have the kid who's a star already in LA.
Yeah, that part
who would love to play in LA, right? You have weapons on offense, okay? And the Bears would probably agree too. The Chargers are not rich, right? The Spanos they're not the richest. They're going to try to buy themselves a new head coach. You could argue with the new head coach, listen, we're not even going to make you make Justin Herbert a start. We'll go get Caleb Williams for you. Then you guys can just be on this timeline together, right? And you could build the organization how you want. So I agree the likelihood of it happening is low, but I don't think it's a total zero, makes no sense. The number 1 for Justin Herbert straight up, I think, is a really interesting, fun swap. Now, if they really want to get out of cap hell, as a Bears fan, I would happily do number 1 and a 4th rounder for Justin Herbert and give me Khalil Mack back for just a really fun, just a fun reunion.
That would
right?
certainly be fun. Yeah, I think that
so.
Bears fans would certainly
Can I just say this again before we get off this topic really quickly, and then we'll move on. And we got a lot to get to here. Still go. This is the best mock draft I've seen to someone, a guy who's does a lot of mock drafts and all that in the the fake fantasy world. This is, to me, now my official dream scenario. In this mock draft, the Bears trade the number 1 overall pick to Washington for the 3rd pick and a first rounder next year, along with a couple other things, right? The Bears would then have the ability to maybe take Marvin Harrison at 3, right? If the Cardinals go a different route, or then they would also have the ability to trade number 3. If you trade Washington number 1 and you get Washington's next first round pick and some more picks, and you go to 3, and then Arizona takes Marvin Harrison at 2, you then can say, who wants Drake May? Get ahead of New England, get ahead of all these other teams. You could trade back again for another. You could have 3 first rounders next year based off of this number 1 pick. So, and then that's what I would argue with Chicago Bears fans saying, well, yeah, but you need to blah, blah, blah. It's like, no. But then if Justin Fields doesn't take the final leap with all this help in year 4, after you commit all these other resources, you get all these picks, you then have 3 first round picks to go get your guy next year. You could get whoever you wanted. You could get whoever you wanted next year. And there's a ton of good quarterbacks coming out next year in the draft too. So it's to me, that's, as a Bears fan, I just want it on the record. That's the thing I'm now looking for.
Make Washington just a win-win in general.
Make Washington go to number 1. And then you can control the draft again for the 2 quarterback spots. Let Marvin Harrison go to Arizona. That's my new haul scenario.
All right, let's move on to the final 2 games. The Bengals on the road at Kansas City. The Chiefs need a win, obviously, to get the sour taste out of their mouth from the Las Vegas Raiders loss, but also just to keep pace here in the seeding and try and put themselves in a at least good position to host a playoff game past the first round. But they are in that position they find themselves in right now at 9-6. The Bengals, meanwhile, absolutely, it's a must-win for them with Jake Browning and company at the helm. Tough matchup here, but I take the Chiefs to rebound. They're 6.5-point favorites. I just trust Patrick Mahomes and company to get it right. The Bengals defense is terrible. A lot of opportunities here for Kansas City to get to their 10th win and probably end up finishing the season at 11 wins and a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more momentum as Patrick Mahomes gets ready to play his first road playoff game in his career, which is crazy.
It's a gigantic must-win for Kansas City, and I think for Kansas City, they're coming into it at the right time because we saw Jake Browning turn into a pumpkin last week, right? It was like, ooh, yeah, that's the Jake Browning we've been waiting for. That was ugly. Those are not good interceptions. Those are not like the Brock Purdy tip interceptions. That's some bad football there. So if Kansas City ends up this game being closer, they don't win, well then, I mean, all bets are off with Kansas City. Right now, let's get through this week. Then we can judge. We'll judge Kansas City more properly. They had an ugly loss at home and against a division rival, and so they need to bounce back this week.
Yes, for sure, absolutely. I mean, they need it for a morale booster. They need that locker room to get engaged and ready for the
deep ball.
It's just, you need
just
exactly.
Throw one bomb where it's just a 50 yards traveled in the air. A guy beats a guy over the top. I don't remember the last time I've seen Kansas City do that, honestly.
I know. That's crazy. That's crazy to think about. It's just the corner routes from like Justin Watson that we've seen every now and then, or Noah Gray. That's the 25 yards down the field. Yeah, we need to bring back the 45-yard, 50-yard bombs for sure for Kansas City to feel a little better about themselves and the ability to score at a whim.
And then run Pacheco, just like lean on Pacheco and just run a more traditional offense. Like, you got really cute. It got ugly. You lost. Like, go back to some hat-on-hat football. Run some play action. Take a deep shot. Run the football and put up big numbers and get out of there.
Perhaps you're excited for the Monday night game, but I'm not necessarily.
You mean Sunday night?
Actually, the Sunday night game. Excuse me.
No Monday because of the college football playoff.
Right. Yeah. So the Packers at the Vikings. I know that there are playoff implications here. Obviously, I'm excited trying to fight for a wild card spot, but I just can't get amped up for a Packers Vikings matchup with Nick Mullins and
Jaron Hall.
Jaron Hall. Sorry,
Jaron
Hall. I meant Jaron Hall. My goodness.
BYU. I think he's the BYU kid or like Nevada or something like that.
Yeah, is he Utah?
He was the kid.
You might be right.
He was the one. Remember, a couple weeks ago, I said, like, why not go back to him? Like
right. Yeah, he's BYU, by the way. Yeah,
and he's a rookie, and he's really mobile. I really liked him coming out of the draft.
That is a little bit more interesting now. I forgot already because that does make it a little more interesting. Would like to see the Packers kind of fold in this situation.
Absolutely,
right?
I would.
So, yeah, there's a little bit there. I still think it's weird that it's the Sunday night matchup. I would have rather had Bengals Chiefs in there, or one of those other Dolphins Ravens would have been a great primetime game here. But nonetheless, we get Packers Vikings. I still take the Packers to win this one. I think they're the better team overall, and so I'll take them in this situation. But I guess it should be a close game. I don't think anyone's running away with this one.
Listen, I don't know how you trust the Packers at all right now. I mean, they are in the Jair Alexander story. Yeah. I mean, that whole thing that was a coin toss.
So bizarre.
I guess I never heard Jair Alexander. Yeah, I guess I just could never have pictured hearing Jair Alexander speak until that video of him with the sunglasses talking about it. I'm like, did they trade the wrong guy? Like, this dude, he just screamed complete diva, not Green Bay at all.
Just totally not
weird.
Very careless about it all. Whatever. Yeah. What a bizarre story.
And he's benched for this game, isn't he? I think they benched him. Yeah. And so
we'll quickly throw it out there for anyone who doesn't know real quick. Like he was only captains get to go out for the coin toss, right? And
he's not voted a captain.
And he was not voted a captain for that game, but because he was from Charlotte and it was against the Panthers in Charlotte, he felt like he was obligated to go out there and represent his hometown. So he went and crashed the coin toss, which is a no-no. And then he also said, speaking for the defense, like, we want the ball, when the coaching staff said we want
Well,
you know,
he said
or
we'll
the
put the
defense wants
defense
the ball.
out there, which if you don't say the words correctly, like defer, then what can happen is you can put your defense out there to start the first quarter and the third quarter. Like
Right.
and
Yes.
so he was, and you just, I
He
didn't
put
love
them
the
in a position where they could have had to be on defense for both the first quarter and
ugly. And
after
I'm
the
glad the
half.
Packers benched him, because it's one of those things
Yeah.
where you're like, no. And that press and this conference said that the interview afterwards was just ugly, because there's no ownership of like, listen, my bad. I should have I should have checked with the coaches to make sure it's okay. Like he did say I think there was a misunderstanding. Like I don't think they knew I was from Charlotte or whatever. But like, hey, speak
Yeah, but
up
that
for
was
the game.
more about him saying like they should have put me out there as a captain. That
Yeah,
game.
but
it was almost like he was digging his heels.
Yes, I'm okay with him having the reason for it, but I'm not okay with then the lackadaisical, just kind of like whatever. And like, I know you're not the quarterback, but you're a little bit of this. You're a star player on that team, a face of the franchise, and in a year that he hasn't had a great year, he's been really banged up. It just was ugly. I'm riding with the Vikings. I'm riding with my guy Jaron Hall, and I want to see the Packers lose, and then the Bears go beat them week 18.
Yeah,
that's what I want.
Yeah, for sure. So that will wrap up the week 17 slate
Really quickly.
Pretty much every game has a meaningful impact.
College football playoff. Any insight? Michigan, Alabama, Rose Bowl, Texas, Washington at the Sugar Bowl, I think.
Yeah. So personally, I like Texas in this game, but I think most like I want Texas to win the game, but I don't know. I mean, it's that's a difficult, to me. That's the more difficult matchup. I have a lot of confidence in Michigan, to be quite honest with you.
I do too.
I think Michigan is the best bet of the college football playoff to make it to the championship, and so
they got Team of Destiny
really
vibes to Michigan.
Them. Yeah, and they just, I mean, they play such a physical brand of football that it's and Alabama, like it stacks up well with Alabama. Obviously, Alabama can win. They're Alabama. They can surprise a lot of people, but I feel good about Michigan's chances. I feel good. Like they also, like to your point, they have this whole like the world's against us type of thing, to where they have that vibe around them, and Michigan's obviously been trying to get that national title. So to me, Michigan's the national championship winner this year. But yeah, I don't know. It's a tough call for the other game. But
my heart wants Michigan, Texas, because I just think that'd be really
awesome.
Fun. Big brands, different brands. And I've always been a diehard Longhorn fan. You know that my mom went to Texas.
Yeah.
And so I've always growing up in Illinois, you don't really unless your parents went to like Illinois or went to Northwestern, like you don't support Illinois football because it's such a pro sports state because of the Chicagoland and Chicago sports.
There's not much community around Illinois. Yeah.
I mean, there's not a Notre Dame fans, but like I was never one of those. So like I'm always a Texas guy for my whole life. So I'm all in on Texas, and then I'm pro the Big Ten, which means if it is Michigan versus Washington, Big Ten champs. I mean, because Washington, even though they're in the Pac-12, they're Big Ten next year. So then you just get to say Big Ten dominates. Or if it's Texas, Alabama, then it's an all SEC final because, again, Texas is joining the SEC next year. So either way, one of the conferences is going to have a really fun chance to, dominate the discussion, right? And
definitely.
The matchup I don't want to see is Alabama-Washington, because I just think that's going to be one of those where
it's not a great storyline.
It's not great storylines, and Alabama will be like Alabama-Texas would be a lot of fun because you have the history of that, the storylines that started Saban's dynasty. Maybe this is the end of Saban's dynasty. Injuring Colt McCoy, that last great Texas team, and then obviously Michigan, Texas, two giant brands. Harbaugh, Texas is Texas finally back. But then Washington, I'll still watch out Washington, Alabama. It'll be fun for Washington because they'll be the undefeated team. Michael Penix Jr., the epitome of the transfer portal. You can make those storylines, but yeah, I'm my heart and my eyes are hoping for Michigan, Texas.
Well, that should be a very fun one, and we'll be back at it on Monday to discuss, the week that was Week 17 in the NFL, but also, to see what happens,
Are we
as
going
we kind
Monday or
of
are we
move
going
forward.
Tuesday?
Well,
Monday,
actually,
I'm
we
off
could
work.
go Tuesday, Monday. Yeah. We'll go Tuesday, actually. Let's do that. Let's enjoy the
Tuesday.
holiday, the day
Yeah.
off work, and then we'll get to talk about those games a little bit at the beginning portion as well. That makes more sense. So let's go that route. So that will be something for you all, hopefully, to look forward to, our loyal listeners and viewers here of the Football Lounge. We appreciate you tuning in. Again, we hope everyone has had and has a great holiday season. Enjoy the weekend. That should be very fruitful for all fan bases across the league, but especially those that are just fans of the NFL like we are. Another really exciting week ahead, and we'll be back next week to recap it all.